Hi everybody, my name is Nanika Edwards and I'm rolling out a 10 video series on rules I've bent. I'm doing this because I realize that there are a lot of people who are kind of curious about me because my mind does work a little differently from the average person. And also because I think some of the principles that I've applied in my life may be helpful for somebody who's listening. So, one of the biggest rules that I've bent across my lifetime concern peer pressure. Peer pressure has almost never been an issue for me, and I know it's an issue for I think most people, right? So, for example, when I was in high school, which is where I think it's really start feeling that most times, at least in my time. When I was in high school, I was very different. Um, I didn't like to party. I had a lunch kit that was blue and red, right? I think was it blue on top and red below, or red on top and blue below? You know those lunch kits that have a hinge in the middle so you can open the top and close it using the hinge, on that hinge. It was that kind of lunchbox, old school lunchbox, right? And I was probably the only person who had a lunchbox where it was one color on top and a different color below. Most people, they had like a full, like, say, green lunchbox, or I don't know, yellow lunchbox, whatever the color was, that was the one color of the lunchbox. But I had no problem having that lunchbox. But I remember one of my classmates commenting and saying that they would see me running about the place with my lunchbox, and that it was kind of interesting that I wasn't bothered by it. And I think when they told me that, I was a little surprised. I didn't even realize that was an issue. So for me, peer pressure has never really been an issue. I had other challenges when I was in high school. I come from a broken home, and it was when I was in high school that my family started falling apart, right? And that's another story for another day. But my challenges were at home, right? But peer pressure was not really an issue for me. And that has spilled over into other aspects of my life. So, for example, when I studied abroad or when I lived abroad, one of the recurring decimal points was people wanting me to go out drinking with them, especially like maybe when was that? Especially maybe when I was in Korea between 2001 and 2003, when I was in Japan between 1996 and 1997. Um, this was a recurring decimal point for a certain period of time. Like, people really wanted me to be part of their drinking crew. And I always, made it clear from the start, no, I'm not interested. I don't drink. To be honest, I really don't like alcohol. I just think it tastes like something, I don't know, you probably clean your bathroom with. I don't like how alcohol tastes, right? So that's one thing. I literally don't like how it tastes. And also, I don't like what it does to people when they drink to excess. Not that I don't drink alcohol at all. I mean, a little champagne here or there, or I love pina colada because I have a sweet tooth, but champagne I like because it's a little sweet. I don't drink it often, but if I go to a wedding or something like that and there's champagne, I wouldn't have a problem drinking a little bit. Pina colada, I love. Anyway, when I was abroad, people would often invite me out drinking. But the good thing is, because I really didn't feel any pressure to join in or to conform, I always turned them down. I think maybe politely at first. I hope I was polite. I think I was a little less diplomatic back then, but I would tell them, no, I'm not interested. I don't drink. But if they press the issue, which they tended to do, like the enemy that doesn't give up easily, right? People would keep coming back, and I guess they think they can break you down over time. But I'd always eventually, the more they pressed, the more heat would be in my response. The more I would say, I'm not interested. And of course, being a Caribbean woman, being from Trinidad, I mean, Caribbean women tend to be very strong. We don't have a problem typically saying what we think. So they were up against my Christian identity. They were up against my Caribbean identity. And then they were also up against the fact that peer pressure really has never been an issue for me. So in the end, what happened was, I think, even though they didn't come back and say anything, I think secretly they really respected me because I stood my ground and they knew that I wasn't going to be taking part in what they very well knew was what we in Trinidad would call absolute dotishness, right? Stupidity, pure stupidity. Going to a bar to get drunk, to enjoy, to be entertained by other people being the most foolish versions of themselves, right? So I wasn't into that, and I think ultimately they probably respected me for that. I want to believe. So yeah, so that's another rule that I think I've bent. And the beautiful thing about not becoming a slave to peer pressure is that when you become an adult, you really know yourself. You're really in touch with yourself. You have not abdicated who you are to a collective identity. Your unique thumbprint, that is a gift from God, doesn't become erased or defaced by a collective identity where everybody gets lost in a group. So I think that's one of the benefits of peer pressure. So for example, if you've lived a life where you've always given in to peer pressure and maybe still find yourself in that place, you can if you're a Christian, you can pray, ask God for the courage to start just being free and being courageous enough to just be yourself, and ask God not only for the courage but also for the joy of discovering, unwrapping who you really are. Because I think if you give in to peer pressure long enough, you get to the point where you're like, gosh, I don't even know who I am anymore. And that's a very sad and tragic place to be. So I would recommend making different choices about maybe who you spend time with, what you say yes to, what you say no to. I've often heard people say no is a complete answer. If people want you to do something and you say no and they say why, you can just say because. You don't have to give an explanation to anybody. If people are pressuring you to fit a particular mold that makes you uncomfortable, that's manipulation. You shouldn't subject yourself to manipulation. So you can ask God to give you the joy of self-discovery, of unwrapping who you are uniquely designed to be. And I guarantee your life is just going to light up, like a light. Your pathway is going to light up with, just a string of lanterns along your path. Think of floral patterned lanterns, floral press lanterns along your journey to your ultimate destiny. That's what your life will become, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so that's it. One of the rules that I've bent is related to peer pressure. Peer pressure. And I'm so glad that I have, because to this day, one of the things that makes my life interesting is knowing that, I'm unique. I'm unique, and happily so. I have no desire to be anybody else. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to share your experiences with me of whether you've typically bent to peer pressure or whether you've typically been able to stand up against peer pressure. Feel free to share your stories in the comment section. Well, that's it for now. Until the next time.